The short explanation is, imagine a bunch of people who like yoga getting together with a bunch of people who like guns.
I joked with everyone I made friends with that I would not leave, and then I ended up never leaving.
So this year, what brought me here is PorcFest. Should I do a long answer or a short answer?
I've been going to PorcFest for many years. I enjoy it. And the fundamental difference is that at Freedom Fest, somebody will try to sell me a gold mine, and at PorcFest, somebody will try to sell me a mango lassi. And it's very good mango lassi, I should say.
I think everybody kind of has a shared belief that people should be free to do whatever they want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. And because of that basic shared belief, everybody here is unified in that way, even though everybody comes from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, from all over the world. But I think it's a really beautiful thing. I think it's a really good opportunity to just meet all kinds of awesome people.
It's a collection of people who are interested in ideas, if not always applying them. They're at least willing to discuss ideas as ideas and as not their own personal feelings about the ideas. And that is a very rare thing to find in the general populace, and it's a very great thing to have for even just a week out of the year.
So I came up and visited, and it was the first time that I'd been amongst a large group of people where the conversations didn't start off down here, as in, do you think that you own your own body? It started off with, presumptions of course, we're all libertarians and we all believe this. And it took off from there. And I was just so relieved.
PorcFest is a better introduction to libertarianism than anything that you could find in a book or on the internet or in a series of documentaries. I know this is going to be in a documentary, so this is a little bit ironic. But on the internet, you get these sort of echo chambers where people who are drawn into libertarianism for different reasons sort of filter each other out, and they'll talk to each other day in and day out for months, weeks, years, decades, but only with people who really subscribe to a certain set of ideological, philosophical, or moral beliefs that connect them in that aspect. But here you see people of all different backgrounds who are all libertarians, but they're not the same. There are some very socially conservative people, some very religious people here. There are some hippies, some very, outwardly stereotypical anarchist types here. I don't know if I really fall into any of those categories specifically. I don't think really the majority of these people here fall into one of those categories. But you'll see that there's no specific type of person that comes to PorcFest, and there's no social event that I've been to before or after this that I could say really has a similar environment.
It's an amazing culture of really interesting thinkers and creative people and folks who have a take on politics that is unlike anything going on in the standard left-right spectrum, which is of course meaningless, and we're trying to free people from that even if it's not in our direction.
I would much rather give a talk or teach a class to people who are there because they want to be there than teach a class at a college where at least some of the people are there because they've got to get a grade or a credit or something of that sort. It's more fun. So at this particular PorcFest, I did 7 events, 2 in the pavilion, which is the large place for doing big speeches. One of the 2 was a debate with somebody, which was fun. I debated the same person on a different subject last year. Last year he won the debate. This year I won the debate. And I've suggested to him that we see if we can do it another one next year. And the other one was a talk that I gave, which was on consequences of climate change, because I've been arguing for a long time that although climate change is indeed real and is probably due to humans, it will have both good and bad effects, and they are sufficiently uncertain that we don't really know whether on net we'll be better off or worse off due to climate change, as opposed to the usual image that it's obviously a terrible catastrophe.
One of the reasons New Hampshire was selected is because it was already pro-liberty, generally, than other states.
I call the rest of the states in the United States the authoritarian 49.
I'm wearing a button that says, I live here, ask me any questions, and that's for the newbies at PorcFest. So PorcFest one of the reasons for it is to bring people from everywhere to introduce them to the ideas of liberty that we live daily in New Hampshire.
So people are very interested in all the advances that we've made here. We're number one in crypto and homeschooling, and we have a big homesteading thing, a lot of agorism here. We're number one in guns. There are gun laws here that we will not enforce.
There's many, many things unique about New Hampshire, even in the U.S., like the right to secession is in the New Hampshire Constitution. That is not true for most states. New Hampshire seceded before the Declaration of Independence. Part of New Hampshire in the north was a separate country for many, many years called the Indian Stream Republic. There's even a liquor today being sold called the Indian Stream Republic. You can see where it's not hard to catch natives doing pro-liberty things, even if they're not deep in Mises or the Chicago School or the Ethics of Liberty. You can see where if we're going out our way to make friends, they're more likely to move in our direction, or at least be less vitriolic than they might otherwise be.
Well, something I think that doesn't get emphasized enough about New Hampshire and about the libertarian movement here in general is the community. It's not the freedom to influence local elections. It's not the fact that we're more than a 3% minority like we are anyplace else. It's the fact that you have friends and neighbors who actually know you, who are willing to come and help you. I moved here only 1 year ago, but I already know dozens of people. Like, not, oh, I know someone, but I truly know them. I know their families, and I know that I could call them and they would come and help me if I were in trouble. They know that if they run into something they can't handle, that I'm simply a phone call or a text message away, and I'll be there to help them. We don't need the government to help us if we help each other instead.
The most important part of being here is the community. It's being in an area where you're no longer weird. Okay, so I'm weird. Okay, I understand that. I'm very weird. I've always been kind of unusual in my life. But for libertarianism, where you're saying we ought to treat each other peacefully, we ought to treat each other with win-win, we ought to treat each other with respecting their self-ownership, we ought to be allowing all relationships to be voluntary and consensual. You think about that and you go, well, of course. Why wouldn't that be? How could you deny that? And yet, out in the authoritarian 49 or in the other countries, that is not assumed. It is actually the opposite is assumed. You cannot have a libertarian society without libertarians. You cannot do that with authoritarians. Very few authoritarians are ever going to convert. I know that there are some who have, of course there are. I wouldn't be a libertarian if I hadn't converted. But it's a very hard process, a very long process. It takes characteristics that are very rare, and it takes a union of those characteristics, which makes it even rarer.
I was always of the sort of question everything mentality, and I think the thing that a lot of people say that the pandemic was sort of the breaking point, but I really don't know if that was the case, because I definitely leaned in the direction of decentralized ethics prior to any sort of government overreach that really pushed me over the line.
Brought my family here in 2016, and we spent a week at PorcFest and then a week traveling around New Hampshire. And then we moved in 2017, so we went to PorcFest in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So this is my 9th PorcFest.
Early on, I already knew about much of the science around economics, of why liberty was important, and I had an intuition about my own preference for personal freedom. I just didn't have it well formulated till later in my life. Actually, when I went to graduate school, and I read a book called Libertarianism in One Lesson, and I've lived and worked all over the world, but I've been a participant in the Free State Project since before the vote, more than 20 years ago.
Practical anarchy, practical ways to achieve liberty.
This book basically explains how when you go to the airport and TSA searches you without probable cause, how we got to that point.
It really all comes down to empowerment in ourselves and being the author of our story, like the authority in our life. And people are pretty open to that in general as well. It doesn't involve politics. It doesn't involve words that'll trigger them and stuff necessarily, but if you walk that path and you go to, move towards taking responsibility for your own life, you can't help but shift in a much more libertarian anarchist direction, because if you're responsible for yourself and I'm responsible for myself and everyone else is responsible for themselves, then how could anyone possibly have the right or even ability to run somebody else's life?
I had a talk earlier this week about using trustworthy, ethical AI to increase influence in New Hampshire, either recruiting more libertarians to New Hampshire, like we hope you German speakers want to come not only visit, we'd like you to come permanently.
I helped some Germans come up a couple years ago. 2 years ago, I brought in a guy named Ali. He needed a place to stay and a way to get up to PorcFest. So I had a spare room and brought him in. And then later he recruited Max to come with him, and they've been repeats every year since.
Die Atmosphäre ist richtig schön. Ich habe mich quasi in die Stadt verliebt. Und ich habe auch die Leute, die ich online kennengelernt habe, schon dann persönlich getroffen und so weiter. Und ja, fand ich super geil. Und dann habe ich den Max mal angehauen und habe gesagt, hey, wie sieht's denn aus, PorcFest nächstes Jahr? Und dann hat er gemeint, er hat sich erst ein bisschen geziert, aber dann im Endeffekt haben wir es dann gemacht und es war eine gute Entscheidung.
Es war in der Zeit, wo ich sowieso auf der Suche war nach libertären Gruppen, also erstmal in Deutschland. Und es war auch während Corona, da bin ich dann über Ali gestolpert. Ja, und jetzt bin ich am herumlaufen, Vorträge organisieren, helfe Leuten beim Einrichten ihrer ersten Wallets und diskutiere ganz fleißig mit anderen Leuten über Kryptowährungen.
We're a minority. So even if you don't want to be part of the Free State, it's okay. Wouldn't you like to have a short vacation with people that share your values and you can live slightly more free? Even as a visitor, you can open carry here. You can go by, I don't drink, I don't smoke, but hey, it's no problem. If you want to do certain freedoms that are just impossible in a German-speaking country and you're watching this, you can do it on vacation at least. And we sure hope you have such a good time that you want to stay.
A lot of people might be kind of hesitant to come because they're like, oh, well, I don't know a lot about the Free State Project, or I don't know if I completely share those ideals. But I think the message I would say is, get out of your comfort zone sometimes, experience things, meet people, maybe you'll challenge your beliefs, maybe you'll challenge theirs, but both of you will gain things out of it. You'll become more well-rounded, you'll know more about the world, know more about your fellow man.
So a concentration strategy says, God bless all you other people who want to live in an authoritarian society. We're not going to change you. But the few, the very few who see the beauty of libertarianism, and the very few who love it so much that they actually want to live for part of their life in that type of society, come here and help us build it. This is the place that we're building it. So build it here with us.
I believe liberty is possible. We have to focus on it, and PorcFest is one of the best ways of seeing that all these people are here to try to live free, and that includes the Germans and the people across the sea and the people who otherwise don't have access to this kind of thing.
So it's a fun place. You can wander around and somebody is selling Indian food that they're making at their campsite, and somebody else has got some kind of barbecue, and someone else has something else, and quite a lot of people have chocolate chip cookies, which I'm fond of, and there are a lot of kids and a lot of dogs and a fair number of babies. As best I can tell this year, the kids outnumber the dogs and the dogs outnumber the babies.
Okay, well, as a newcomer to PorcFest and to the United States and to New Hampshire, as an Austrian, what would you have to say to your Austrian compatriots?
It's worth the trip. It's because you will get experiences you won't be able to get at home, like in Austria or in Germany. So that is something no one can take from you ever. And you'll have connections that no one can take from you ever again. And this is something that shouldn't be underestimated at all.
Very nice. Thank you, Susanne.
Peace out.